If Facebook offered $100,000 to acquire SciLynk right now, would you sell? Three, two, one. Hey everyone, this is Rick and welcome back to the See the Startup Journey, the entrepreneurship podcast sharing the origin stories of amazing founders and the companies in under 20 minutes. Today I'll be chatting with two teen entrepreneurs, Arnav and Arvind, who are building SciLynk, the world's first science social network. They might be young, but they are super ambitious and driven. They learned how to code on their own and are now raising money for their startup. Now, before we begin, a lot of my listeners aren't actually subscribed. So smash that subscribe button right now, and if by the end of this video you didn't like our content, you can just press it again to unsubscribe. Easy enough? Let's get to it. Hey Arnav and Arvind, thank you both for coming onto my podcast today. First of all, before we talk about your journeys, I want to get a burning question out of my mind, which is, how old are you guys?
I'm 15.
Yeah, I'm almost 16 actually. I'm 15 and I'm turning 16 in a few days.
Okay, so you're 15 and 16 and you're starting a company that will be the first science social network in the world. Okay, so first tell me more about SciLynk. What do you guys mean by the first science social network? It's probably not TikTok, dancing around to viral songs, right?
SciLynk won't be anything like TikTok. It may be more like a LinkedIn or so for scientists. There was never really a way for science people like me, Arvind, science enthusiasts, science lovers to communicate, collaborate, and connect online. So we wanted to build a huge science social network that could be built to connect students, professors, researchers, no matter what level you're at, whether you're a PhD or just starting out with biotechnology. So let's just say somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson, a famous scientist, wants to elaborate on an experiment or a theory that he went over that day. He could send it out to his science following, and it would be a big science community that allows for progress in science online.
You mentioned LinkedIn, and you guys are both on LinkedIn, and that's just something that I'm really impressed by because, back in high school, I was probably playing League of Legends with my friends, right? So why are you guys doing this? Why aren't you every other high school that I can think of, just playing games and, instead you're starting a company?
Yeah, so it's actually a really interesting story. Arvind and I met in summer of 2020 during the whole shelter-in-place lockdown, and we instantly clicked over all of our shared interests, science and business and technology. And we soon started bouncing back ideas on how we could get lab internships, me being interested in biotechnology, him being interested in psychology. And I thought that what if there was a way that students and professors could connect and message each other, get career advice, and get access to lab internships, and or even if they can't get there, how to get there. So it was a small messaging kind of solution, a small messaging platform, but that soon evolved into a huge scientific platform for everybody, researchers, professors, students, just casual science guys who just want to read more on science.
Tell me more about, you guys met over the summer, you came up with the idea. What was the next step? Did you do any testing? Did you talk to scientists to see if they actually want this idea?
We first developed a minimal viable product, something with just the bare minimum of features, like Arnav said, messaging, some groups and stuff. And then we showed it to our science teachers at first, science and math teachers, to be like, hey, this is something that we're working on. Would you like that? Because not only they're the perfect representation of a hybrid of both ideas, education and people who contribute to the science world. And I think it's fair to say that they really, really liked the idea because they could not only help their own students, because most teachers, they love teaching. It's their passion. So they could not only help their students, they could help other students as well with their questions, which I think is something that they really liked. And currently we're actually in the process of talking to students and professors and actual quote unquote actual scientists to see if they could also like the idea and see if they'd also want to, try it out.
Mm-hmm. And what sorts of feedback are you getting from them right now?
I think I talked to a doctor, a friend of mine actually, and he was like, oh yeah, but I would love to see a feature with the coffee chats where I can have one-on-ones with a pre-med student, or where maybe I can have a one-on-one with other doctors to discuss certain types of therapy. So they like the idea, but then I think it's really cool because we get to see another perspective from them from the wide field that science covers.
That's awesome. And I imagine that building a social network is complicated. Like just from, I'm majoring in CS. I know that there's a lot to do with like front end, back end database and like hosting a server. Are you guys doing all of that on your own?
It's kind of funny. I mean, I never liked code at all. I thought it was something I would never do. I knew a little bit, but the little bit I knew made me not like it. It was just something that was never pertaining to me as an individual. But I fell in love with the idea of SciLynk, and I just really loved it. So I got together with the free resources online. I started building SciLynk myself, started learning some web development languages like PHP, CSS, HTML, JavaScript. And I started building SciLynk, and it's come pretty far. I mean, all the images that we've released publicly are all demo images and they're not concepts. So we're pretty proud of how the platform looks, the UI. And as for servers and hosting, we still need to fundraise for some of those. We're using some cheapest possible hosting right now. So we need a lot more hosting and server and database requirements for a social network of the scale we're trying to build. But other than that, we're pretty proud of how far we've come in terms of using what we have and not outsourcing the work for building SciLynk.
I think that when we first met, I probably knew a little more than Arnav, or we're about the same, but he kind of took off coding-wise, just blasted past me learning coding. And I think that with the skill that he's at right now, he can probably sustain SciLynk and continue building the new features we want for a long while.
Wow, that's amazing. So can you share with us some of those resources that you use to learn? Because I think a lot of my listeners might not also be CS majors, or they don't really know how to code. If they have an idea, how should they go about, prototyping something up and just, having something to test out the idea with?
Sure. So there's several resources out there that are free. I mean, you can go to Coursera. As a student, you can audit a free course, and you can even get a certificate from it. And then I also just went to Stack Overflow sometimes to ask and answer questions. But other than that, if you ever run into an error, it's super easy to find the errors online and the solutions to them, because they've always been run into over and over again. So I think online, the coding world is pretty solid, and there are already so many answers and helpful people out there. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with SciLynk, right? People who want to be interested in science should have a place to ask, answer questions, and get the kind of resources that we got for coding.
And yeah, I think adding on to Arnav, YouTube is a really great resource. There's like a full Django course on YouTube. There's full Python courses. Pretty much every coding language you could imagine. Then there's probably like a 3 to 4 hour course to just get into the beginnings, at least, of coding. So I think if you have an idea and you really want to do it, you can just search up on YouTube. Like, how do I do this? And you'll probably find some really detailed tutorial.
Yeah, YouTube and Stack Overflow are lifesavers even in college. So how much time do you both spend on SciLynk, versus on school and other extracurricular activities?
I would say I spend most of my time outside of school and other commitments, obviously, to SciLynk, because it's more than just like an extracurricular at this point. It's like a full-on company. It's like something that I really, really want to get done. It's like my baby, basically. You have to spend a lot of time on it for it to succeed. To build an actual company, I think, as you obviously know, requires like a lot of work, a lot of time commitment. And an interesting stat is that 90% of startups fail within the first 2 to 5 years. But we really, really want to be in that 10% that just takes off and succeeds, because our vision for SciLynk is that tons and tons, millions of users can just contribute to each other and advance the scientific community as a whole. I think that you need to really put in the hours to get that result.
It is like a baby to us, and we both made it very clear in the start of SciLynk that it's going to be more than just a project to us, and it's going to be something that we're going to work hard to make succeed. And in terms of time management, it's something that we both have learned along the way. At the start, we were both like really, really all over the place. Hey, I have this club on Monday. Oh, I have this club on Tuesday. How are we going to meet, right? So it was a bit of a challenge at the start, but overall, I think this whole journey has taught us a lot of time management, setting aside time for working on SciLynk, and it's come pretty far. I mean, our time management skills have grown exponentially over the journey.
Yeah, you guys are parents at 15 and 16. That's awesome. So you kind of mentioned, your vision for SciLynk, but what are, your personal goals? Like, are you just thinking of starting this thing, taking it to the moon, not go to college and retire at 25 as millionaires? Or do you have, some sort of other long-term goal in mind?
Well, personally for me, I want to take SciLynk to the moon, like you said. I want to make it a platform with millions and millions of users. I think the scientific community is huge online, and like there's a lot of opportunities that we can go into, like internships, courses, education. There's so much we can do with it. And I don't want to just drop it once I go to college. I do want to go to college and pursue my scientific careers and my scientific degree goals. But at the same time, I still want to keep running SciLynk, and I still want it to be something that I'm working on in the decades to come and make it a huge presence in this online scientific world.
I think my personal goals are obviously very similar to Arnav. Obviously, I want SciLynk to be this huge platform, retire at 25, but beyond that, I really want to pursue a career in actual science because it's something that I really, really enjoy. It's something that I really love. So as Arnav said, I'm interested in psychology. So I ideally want to go to med school, get my medical degree, and become a psychologist.
Sure, come to WashU. All right, so where are you guys right now with the company? Like I know you mentioned fundraising. Like how are you guys planning on doing that?
So at the very beginning, we kind of just wanted to bootstrap our way to success, just keep on working at it until we can eventually like become profitable. But then maybe after like 3 weeks, we realized that's not realistic with the amount that servers cost for users and like marketing, customer cost of acquisition, that kind of stuff. So at the beginning, we actually wanted to go straight to venture capitalists, but then as you may know, that venture capitalists require traction, and also like venture capitalists in general don't invest in younger students because we obviously have school. So we decided to just go to Kickstarter because more than just the capital we could acquire, it's also like we can get beta testers and we can acquire a community who will like constantly support us. So we're working on a Kickstarter campaign. We've been working on it for a while now. So yeah, that's our main way to get funding.
Yeah, can you walk me through, the steps of launching a Kickstarter campaign, to some of my listeners as well who might be thinking of doing that? Like, how do you need to have a product ready?
No, so actually, many of the Kickstarters we've seen are just concepts. We do have our product ready, so that's our case. But many of the products we've seen your idea has to be detailed enough to convey to the backer that, hey, I know what I'm doing and I know what the steps after I get my money. I know what I'm going to do with the money. You should assure that your backer that their money is going to a good cause. You just have to work on a good story, a good way to get the message to the backer and connect with your right demographic and offer good rewards, right? I mean, apart from the rewards we're going to give on SciLynk on like premium features and stuff, we also want to give our backers something to remember us by, like merch and swag and stuff like that. So you should really connect with your backer and you should really build a bond, because these are the people who really believe in you, and these are the people you should be most grateful to because they kickstarted your business.
Yeah. And I mean, starting a company, it's obviously challenging and stressful at times, right? Like perhaps even more so for, high schoolers, because you have this pressure to, do well in school, get into a good college. So, and I know, Arnav, you've been a listener of The Seed as well, so you might know that we're recently focusing on the theme of mental health. So I was wondering if you guys could share some insights as to, your experience with stress and anxiety as students on top of, being a startup founder.
So for me, I live in a really hyper competitive area where everyone's like get going for that 99%. And I get really stressed about it personally because like, oh no, my grade dropped. And then I think SciLynk actually provides like a relief for me because it's like a way out of all this ecosystem of pressure and stress I get from school. But obviously that's not the case for everyone. So what I do is I never have notifications on my phone. There's this app called IFT where it gives you only the most important notifications. So I only have notifications turned on for my parents and my mock trial coach in case he actually needs me really bad. So those are the only 3 notifications I have. I think that you should also get exercise, obviously, like get outside because the sun and being in the wind and stuff is really, really good for you. And the last thing I do is I read books. I read a lot of books. Every time I get super stressed, I go to SJPL library online, just check out a book and read for like hours on end.
I do a lot of the same thing that Arvind does. Beyond turning off your notifications, sometimes I just shut down all my electronics, like it's super chaotic. There's so many messages, extracurriculars, grades, emails to keep up with, and it's too much sometimes. So just turn off all your electronics, go do something you like, spend time with your family. I personally like to go out, get some exercise, go biking, play tennis. I'm gonna play basketball with my brother, and do things that keep you calm versus things that like work your mind, because that will make you more mentally stressed, which is not the goal, right? So although it sounds cliche, I see a lot of people prioritizing other things over their mental health, and I think mental health should always be your number one priority.
Yeah, physical health as well. So from one student to another, like what advice do you have for someone like me? You know, we're still students, but we're interested in startups and might want to start something of our own in the future.
I think entrepreneurship is something that should come naturally to you. Your ideas should be something that you really, really feel passionate about. Like talking to you about the seed and stuff, I can see you're really passionate about talking to startup founders, and that's why the seed has gotten like as successful as it has, interviewing billionaires. And I think when you have that kind of passion and you don't force the idea as some sort of resume booster, it becomes something that it's limitless. When you have these things like, oh, I have an ulterior motive, I'm doing it to get into a good college or something, it limits the growth of what your idea can be. And I think that once you find your idea, you just have to try to work as hard as you can with what you have currently. So in like my case, I wasn't really a good coder, but I didn't want to outsource the work, so I used to use my skills and the free resources I had online, and I used it to make SciLynk. So I think that that those are like two things that I find really important in entrepreneurship. And the last thing would just be organize. I mean, I cannot reiterate it enough. When we started, Arvind and I were all over the place, bouncing back ideas. Hey, we should do this, we should do that. We weren't even writing it down. So now over time, we've become much more organized. We have swim lanes of things like in progress, things that we have to do, future ideas. And we have a pretty much, it's not set in stone, obviously, but we keep a good flexible timeline of what we want to do. And because of that, our company has gotten a lot more efficient in terms of where we are right now.
If you see a problem in your life, or you see something where you can like fill a hole with the company, I think you should definitely just go for it, especially as a student, because later on in your life, you'll have a job and other commitments. But right now, we just have school, and like we have our parents obviously like paying for us. We don't have rent and food and stuff to worry about. I think that's like really important. If you see something, just go for it. It'll be like a really good experience. Whether it succeeds or not isn't as important as the actual experience, because you'll gain valuable skills along the way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Like a lesson I learned from interviewing all these young founders as well is like, you know, you should really start early, because when you're a student, you don't have really anything to lose kind of. But then when when you have a family, you have a stable job, it's a lot harder to make that jump. So absolutely. Awesome. So I'm going to, jump into this mini game. It's called Co-Founders in Sync. So basically I'm going to ask a question and I'll count down from 3, and I want both of you to answer at the same time. All right, so the first one, superpowers, invisibility or flight? 3, 2, 1.
Invisibility.
All right, Snapchat or TikTok? 3, 2, 1.
Neither.
This next one, biology, chemistry or physics? 3, 2, 1.
Physics.
Biology.
Stanford or MIT? 3, 2, 1.
Stanford.
And this final one, if Facebook offered $100,000 to acquire SciLynk right now, would you sell? 3, 2, 1.
No.
Wow. So is there a particular valuation that you would actually sell at?
Not right now. I think we can potentially grow it to a really big social network type of valuation in the hundreds of millions, because it's a space that hasn't really been explored before. And I think that with potential funding later on, we can grow this really big. So I think as an entrepreneur, like I said before, it should be something I created and something I'm proud of. So even though it's really tempting, like, wow, $100,000, I could really use it. I think if I do it myself, it's something, even if I don't make $100,000 later on, it's something that I did, and it's something I can be proud of.
It pretty much echoes thoughts, and I think it's too early to go for an acquisition. We haven't launched or done anything yet. So yeah.
I love how both of you just said no straight up. So that's awesome. One final question. What would you say is the best advice you've ever received?
For me, it comes from my dad, who was like a super big inspiration to me. Work hard, just keep going no matter what. I think that really vibes with me, because I think you'll obviously have hardships throughout your life, throughout your startup founding experience. But if you just keep working at it, if you just keep having these ideas and you keep executing them and you keep learning, at some point you will hit that huge idea. At some point you will become successful if you just keep working hard. I know that's like advice you'll hear almost every day, but I think it's super valuable advice that you should really try and take to heart.
Yep, and similar to him, I got this advice from my mom, and I think when I first heard it, I brushed it off. I'm like, Mom, that's obvious. I'm not that stupid. But she was telling me how I should always organize my next steps and always create flowcharts of where I want to go. So let's just say I'm at point 1 right now and I need to get to point 2. There should be 3 or 4 different ways I can get there, and 3 or 4 different obstacles I hit. I should always be able to take another path and navigate it through. We see exponentially as many paths that we can take, and we can think deeper about the obstacles and how we can overcome them than rather hitting them and being like, oh shoot, what do I do now? So I think that was a super, super great piece of advice that I received a couple months ago, actually.
Amazing. So thank you both so much for coming on again. That's it for today's interview. I'm looking forward to the day when it's like, 100 million valuation for SciLynk. Yeah, hopefully I could be an investor maybe. But awesome. Again, thank you both for coming on.
Thank you so much.
That was our pleasure. Thank you so much, Rick.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. That was under 20 minutes, but if you'd like to hear my takeaways, stick around. Last time we talked about how you don't have to be a business major to know how to start a company. Similarly, you don't have to be a CS major to know how to code up your idea. Arnav is 16 and he didn't even like coding, but he is so passionate about SciLynk that he went online, went to courses like Coursera or edX, and learned how to code and put together the demo without outsourcing anything. There's also a lot of no-code platforms out there right now that helps you create an app without even writing a line of code. And my second takeaway, which is something that I learned not only from Arnav Arvind, but also from a lot of the other entrepreneurs on my podcast, which is if you see a problem that you could solve or a gap that you could fill, just go for it. Especially when you're a student, when you don't have much to lose. And no, you don't have to wait till you're in college. These guys are starting at 15. And finally, on our recent theme of mental health, turn off notifications on your phone. You can even turn off all your electronics when you're actually working. We live in a world where we're constantly bombarded by push notifications. And no, you don't have to know that your exam has been graded immediately or that The Seed has published a new episode. Although I'll definitely recommend checking it out when you're commuting or exercising. Alright, that's it for today's episode. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, and let's grow our seed of innovation and creativity together. I'll see you next time.